How's it going? I'm B. Smitty,
I'm Jesse.
and today we're talking about Hitman Hart, Wrestling with Shadows. Released in 1998 and is directed by Paul J. And this is our first documentary that we're doing. And probably the best documentary out there.
It's up there. it's probably, in my opinion, my favorite documentary.
I think it's for like documentaries. It's definitely one of the best documentaries, and I think it's definitely one of the best for being at the right place at the right time.
Oh yeah, that defines that statement. Right place at the right time.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of documentary. I love documentaries, and this is a great one.
Yeah. Basically, documentary is the wrestler Bret Hart was on his way, basically at the end of his contract type situation.
Yeah, worked for at the time it was WWF. Worked there 14 years, and he was a big time character for majority of those years.
Yep.
And this was a time where WWF actually had a pretty big rival, company, pretty much, putting them into the ground.
Yeah,
almost.
taking over ratings and everything.
And they're just as WCW, they're just taking all these big name people and just paying them. They had open checkbooks that they could just write whatever for these wrestlers, and they can sign the Hulk Hogan's and all old school wrestlers. They had all them great names that I don't know how wrestling is today with people knowing every single wrestler, but
right.
Those wrestlers back then, a lot of average Joes knew who Macho Man Randy Savage was, or Hulk Hogan, or like the Razor Ramon. Everybody heard those like names, so those were the characters that they were grabbing. And it pretty much came to the time where Vince McMahon was initially paid Bret Hart this big time money, but it got to the point where it's I don't know if I can do that kind of money. And WCW's there like, here, I can pay you a lot more money and you don't have to work as much.
Right. Yeah.
So anybody sees that kind of deal, it's like, I only have to work half the amount of time and get paid twice as much as I'm getting paid. Majority of people are going to do that.
Yep. And the crazy thing too is he originally declined the bigger offer.
He wanted to stay, and Bret Hart was a loyal,
and
I guess employee to Vince McMahon, and it's.
And I think too, I bet you during the time, I think it was probably really stressful, obviously, while making this documentary of things that were going on at that point even. But I'm willing to bet even like when he decided to stay at WWF, they thought this documentary was going to be a very like positive, like uplifting, stick to your roots.
They started probably not quite a year beforehand or so.
I think I think that's kind of how they started. It was 1 year before.
Yeah, it's basically documenting this wrestler on the road, and it so happens during the documentary, all right, he's gonna switch sides, and the contract ends, and Vince McMahon really couldn't oblige to his contract. That's really what it was generally supposed to be.
Yep.
And then the huge ordeal happens, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
And,
yep. Yeah. So. But yeah, basically this documentary is really, it's kind of just like, there's really no, which I think that's what makes this documentary as good as it is. There's no creative aspect to it at all. It's basically carrying a camera.
It'd be like you and I going out and just following someone around.
Yep. And it's definitely, it's one of those things where if you, I mean, obviously they found someone, relevant for sure,
Right.
But it kind of gives you the notion that like you can create a documentary just by having a camera, so, just making things happen. And I think, like I was saying, the right place at the right time, like, there's so many different like levels of emotion in this documentary, especially for the people involved. But like you really feel for the character, or the people.
Oh yeah.
They're not even characters, the people involved
Well,
in this.
with us being big wrestling fans,
Mhm.
you know, growing up, at this time when it came out in '98,
Mhm.
you didn't know a whole lot about the behind the scenes of wrestling.
Yeah,
at that time.
it was like very early on, very
wrestling-
early internet for everyone around that.
Like,
we
the
knew
glory
at
days of
least.
pro wrestling was very strict in keeping the that idea that wrestling is real.
It's real, yep.
You know, and probably towards that time, it started to get a little bit more.
Yeah, because there was
on
that
the-
other documentary, Beyond the Mat, which
Yeah.
I don't know what year that came out, but it seemed like it was actually around the time. But
I
maybe
would
not.
say so. If I had to guess, probably '99. I think it was after it. Maybe I could be wrong.
99, yep.
Uh,
So, yeah, that was like kind of, wrestling got very weird at that time period.
It-
And I think maybe
it was getting into that entertainment
Yeah.
like aspect, and the wrestling part was disappearing.
Mhm.
Like, it was starting to become shock value TV.
and I think this documentary is the line between the two, for
Yeah,
sure.
It is. It's and people watch it's like, oh, it's like, man, well, the true fans of pro wrestling are like, you know, this wrestling isn't what it is anymore.
Yeah.
It's but
Yeah.
no, but it really, you know, kind of shows you a little bit of, you know, what it doesn't go into detail, but you know, Bret Hart kind of tells you it's like, you know, this what you see on TV, the all like happy and isn't really what it is.
No.
This guy was on the road 300 plus days a year. I mean, working every single night. I mean, and it's like, it's not like it's a normal job. You're on
Right.
the road
Yeah.
all the time, and you're getting slammed and thrown around, and
And you're surrounded by sketchy situations.
yeah.
A lot
I mean,
of, like the
during-
generation of us, the wrestling of our time, like majority are either dead
or
or
just,
still have addiction problems,
Yeah.
or
just hanging on to their last thread of being a pro wrestler.
Yep.
It's really a disturbing
Yeah.
lifestyle during that time. Nowadays, I think they have a whole lot
The
easier,
regulations.
more regulations. You have to get, they have to pay them properly.
Yeah.
Like, these wrestlers back then, they didn't know what they were getting paid until that day.
Yep.
And so, you know, I've read it. You know, there's wrestlers that pay $50 for
Yep.
showing up, and then unless you're one of the big stars like a Bret Hart or, you know, Shawn Michaels, all them, that's when you start making the big bucks.
Yep.
But
Yeah, there's
re-
very selective few.
But
back
really,
then.
the big bucks came when they were on TV.
Yep.
You know,
Pay-per-views.
Pay-per-views. And a lot of people think, oh, that's all they do is like TV and these pay-per-views. But no, they do those crappy little house shows.
Sketchy house shows. They're still, you know, and those are the chances that they get hurt more because
Yeah.
they're not. Because like I always think of that as like, if you're not on TV, they probably don't care as much. So like,
Yeah.
you know, they're not. I feel like that's the time when like you get the real bumps and bruises because
Yeah.
like you're kind of just like whatever, let's just go through the paces.
Those wrestlers probably weren't totally prepared. They're probably on the road for 2 days drinking and,
Yep.
and doing whatever they were doing. And
Yep, and then a lot of times too, even like this, the people weren't as big of a star as say like a Bret Hart, were like first just kind of just random
Yeah.
wrestlers that weren't normally on TV, so like they
Yeah.
always had to deal with that,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
unprofessional type people.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think what's awesome about this documentary is just the openness that Bret Hart let the camera crew, like they actually let him in the house. Like it could have not been as good as if Bret Hart was just
Yeah.
like. There's
yeah.
only really one time that they showed that, but they already showed what was going on.
Yeah.
Like that he just didn't want them filmed, but you already know what's going on. You know,
Uh-huh.
because I think that's when Vince said that
That's
he
when
wanted to back out.
That's when Vince called him at home and told him that he wanted out of that 20-year contract.
Yep.
And,
He was in financial peril.
yeah, Vince was in financial peril.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't afford Bret Hart
And
anymore.
what was his wife's at the time named Julie?
Julie, yeah.
And I love how Julie knew that was crap.
Yeah.
Like she already knew.
Yeah.
Like
And to watch it, to see that just the stress level of
Mhm.
like a wife at home, you
Yep.
know, being the wife of a pro wrestler.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Mhm.
Like, I couldn't imagine what that woman had to go through for all
For
those
those
years.
years.
Like you could tell, just the look on her face, like, man, when
Especially-
is this gonna be over?
Yeah, especially like, you know, both of them going through all that and then and you're the top wrestler, and then you're having your boss just being like, nah,
Yeah.
sorry,
So we really don't have anything for you.
They fought for him not to take the bigger deal, and then he took it, and then they was like, nah, never mind.
Nah, we can't do it.
And he had to go call Eric back up.
Yeah.
And just.
But but WCW at the time, they had the money. They probably loved seeing that phone call or hearing that phone call for Bret Hart. It's like, that's offer's still on the table. So.
And it's crazy how terrible WCW did with all those wrestlers that they had.
Fate. And Bret Hart would be the first one to tell you that they didn't even know what to do with a Bret Hart character.
Yep.
I mean, and it's,
It was primed for WCW to take down WWF.
It was almost just a thing like they got Bret Hart just to get Bret Hart.
Yeah.
All right, we got Bret Hart.
I think that's almost probably how it was for every person.
Yeah.
If we get all these people, everyone will just watch us, but that's just not the case. And
they did some very smart things, but it didn't last long. They didn't know how to make a story out of anything, so they were
just getting an idea, but they couldn't keep the idea alive, long enough to keep attention.
Yeah. But pretty much what made this documentary is the climatic.
Mm-hmm. The Montreal Showdown.
Yeah, the Showdown. What is known now as the Montreal Screwjob.
Yep.
And it's pretty much, it was a big ordeal of how Bret Hart's going to leave, the WWF. Because, when that whole issue came up of Vince not being able to pay him anymore, Bret Hart's the champion.
Yep.
And during that time, being a champion was a huge thing. I don't know how it is anymore, and I guarantee it's not like it was then.
It's I don't know how it is now, but it's not how it was.
The big fears in wrestling is if somebody's out of their contract and is still the champ, their worst fear is them taking that belt and going on their competitor's show with that belt.
Yep.
And it's happened in the past before, and that's why it's a huge thing. It's like, all right, if you're leaving the WWF, you need to drop the belt. You have to lose.
Yeah, and Bret's big thing, he didn't want to drop the belt in Canada.
Yeah, he didn't want to drop the belt in Canada on this pay-per-view. He just wanted it to be a schmaz, which is basically a disqualification where he still holds on to the belt, and he wants to drop it the next day on television.
Yep.
I can see where Bret Hart's coming from. I can see where Vince McMahon's coming from.
Yep.
But kind of knowing business and I understand where Vince is coming from. He doesn't want.
Looking back now, I think Bret should have just dropped the belt.
Yeah.
Just because if he would have just agreed to drop the belt, this story would not even be talked about right now. I mean, the documentary came out, but the climax of the documentary would not have happened.
Yeah.
But I think that's just where I think Bret obviously felt that, hey, I took your contract and you took it away, and I asked for full creative control with the belt because of obvious reasons.
So, and that's kind of where I see Bret Hart's side.
Yeah, because he asked for the control, and Vince said, whatever you need or
whatever you want.
Yep.
And
so, and then he even went on saying that when Vince even told him that when he knew deep down that wasn't going to happen.
Well, yeah, they had they had their meetings before the match, and said, I just want have him do a run in, Oh yeah, Vince, you can hear him on because he was mic'd up, and you can hear Vince. Oh yeah, we'll take care of it. Yeah, no problem. We'll just I'll drop it on Raw the next night. And, this is how we're going to do it. They had it laid out as far as Bret knew. It's going to be laid out. All right, we're going to have this match. It's going to end in a disqualification. All right, I'll still have my belt. I'm not going to drop it here on pay-per-view in Canada. I'll just do it the next day on Raw. I'll give up my belt.
Yeah.
I'll just go in, I'll give up my belt, say my goodbyes, and I was like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But what the documentary ends up doing is they show the match, and then all of a sudden, towards the end of the climatic part of the match when it was supposed to be a run-in, I always see Vince McMahon, signaling, and then they ring the bell, and it's like, all right, what happened?
Yeah.
And you see the look on Bret Hart's face. He's like, they screwed me.
Immediately knew.
Immediately.
Yeah.
So basically what that means is they made it to where, his opponent Shawn Michaels won the match, supposedly by submission. And, Shawn Michaels, you're the new champion. Sorry, Bret Hart, you lost.
Yeah, which is probably one of the craziest things that's ever happened in wrestling.
It's always going to be talked about. Because that stuff didn't happen in wrestling.
No.
There's always that strict code in wrestling where you follow the story.
Yep.
This is just how it is. And then out of the blue, the owner and pretty much Vince McMahon and a couple other people got together. It's like, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
He's going to lose the belt tonight. I don't care what he says. He's
Yeah.
not taking that belt out of here. That's what happened.
Yep. And that's really all it came down to is that. And I think it was a little bit of a power, thing as well. Because, Vince is Vince. And, I think, I think at one point during it, I think Vince was probably thinking that, hey, I can't pay you, I'm calling you up to let you know I can't pay you. And I think deep down, Vince was probably just hoping that Bret would be like, you know what, let's just make it happen. It's just, I get it.
I'll
let's
move on.
And I think when, once they had that talk that he wouldn't drop the belt, I think that was the time when Vince was like, nah, he's dropping it. He's dropping it.
The amazing thing too, it wouldn't be as bad of a screw job if it was some like other wrestler, but being the fact that it's Bret Hart and it's somebody that worked years and years and years for Vince McMahon, it's like, this is business. Sorry.
Yep. Sorry.
I don't care what kind of great relationship we had over these 14 years, but I'm screwing you over, and you can get out of here.
We were pretty young when we watched this too, because we watched it when it happened.
Yeah.
And
the pay-per-view was weird.
The pay-per-view was weird. I remember we were being young and just being like, because like there was, at the end of the match, there was so many people around the ring, and you knew that was weird.
Yeah.
It didn't really make much sense, but like it was just like a whatever thing. Then after the match, like Bret Hart slamming TVs,
right. I mean,
like the crowd's dead silent.
Yeah, it's just like it looks like a mess.
Yeah,
like,
there's something wrong. Like there's just like everyone is out there, and there's security and all this stuff, and like when we watch it, we're just like,
it's not part of the show.
Yeah,
there's something not right.
Yeah,
and obviously that's what happened.
Yep.
And it pretty much, for me, it ruined wrestling.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it, like, we stopped really kind of even talking about it. I think we
watched it maybe another year.
Yeah, I think that was like just like the end of the road, and then it kind of just fizzled out slowly in the next year or two.
They had the whole Stone Cold thing come through, which was entertaining, and that's what pretty much, helped WWF gain ground again.
Yep.
And he's a respectable wrestler, Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they definitely had this good Attitude Era years afterwards, but still, even in the Attitude Era, the wrestling was gone.
The wrestling was gone. Yeah, it's really. I mean, Stone Cold really kind of held them until like The Rock kind of took over. I mean, basically since the Bret Hart, like the whole screw job thing, it's basically been there's been like one guy that helped carry it. So it's like Stone Cold, The Rock, John Cena.
Yeah.
I don't know who's really the big person right now at this time. Probably still John Cena.
I think they count on him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's that's another probably guy who's getting broke down physically of just the demands of wrestling. So,
yeah. Then we actually met Bret Hart recently.
Yeah, that was a pleasure to meet.
That was what, July,
August.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And he actually mentioned, because we brought our DVDs with us, and he mentioned that it's still bothers him to watch it at this time. He can't even watch it. Yeah. And but it's crazy, to see it, kind of see him talk about it, in real life, because when you watch the documentary, you kind of like, you really kind of like, you're fighting for that Bret Hart character.
You feel for Bret Hart.
Yeah, you feel for him,
Yeah, because it's not, I mean, that Hitman is a character, but still, it's Bret Hart.
Yeah.
And that's his life.
Yeah. And that's kind of like a little bit of like the thing too, is like, separating. Like,
separating wrestling life to normal life.
I think that was the big thing that made all this happen. I think that's probably what Vince was thinking. Like, hey, this is what I want to do as like a business. Not your character. Like, as like, hey, let's just drop the belt.
It's more or less, it's not personal to you,
it's
Bret Hart and your family. This is something I have to do about the Bret Hart or the Hitman character. And we really don't know where to go with the Hitman character anymore, which I think is a bunch of crap, in my opinion. But because they could have done so much with Bret Hart, and they could have had matches. Him and Shawn Michaels could have had matches for years. And with Steve Austin, but it all come down to money.
Yeah,
that's what it came down to.
And I think it's, I think with like Bret, I think Bret was really he kind of liked his, like, how the Hitman character was and kind of what he felt what wrestling was, and I don't think he wanted to think wrestling was any other way. Like, like Shawn Michaels, he lived through the whole same era. He was early 90s, so he kind of knew, but he was open to, hey, to get views on the show, we kind of have to get a little crazy. And I think Bret was just like not feeling that at all.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels was, I have respect for him for being like super loyal to whatever Vince McMahon wanted to do.
Yep.
It's pretty much, I'm sure Shawn Michaels was a complete jerk about certain things, but still he did it,
Right.
Oh, you want me to go out there and act like a buffoon, and sure, I'll do it. I don't care. Just give me my paycheck type thing, so. You're not going to see Bret Hart go out there and act like how Shawn Michaels act. It just wasn't his thing.
I think what would have been good for Bret to like kind of like embrace was, like, because basically what Vince was originally pushing, like towards the very end of this documentary even, was like having like Shawn Michaels kind of bash Bret, and then Bret just say some things back. Like if Bret kind of would have just kind of like, because Shawn Michaels he was the next person anyways, and I think Bret knew that, and I think that kind of bothered the whole thing anyways. But you could still become something different without having to change drastically. Just be down for the cause, and I think that was the whole problem. Is I think with Vince or Bret, they just weren't down for the cause. It was just time for
two different visions.
Yep.
Vince McMahon was ready for that different shock value attitude era. Bret Hart is old school.
Yep. And that's what Vince even said like right afterwards, is that he is no longer into the good guys versus bad guys.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of, that was Bret's era.
Yeah, he carried WWF on his back for many years after Hulk Hogan left. So it's a very interesting documentary, and it's definitely worth watching. And
it is on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
At the airing of this YouTube channel today.
Yes.
It is up. So definitely check it out.
Yeah. Even if you get bored, YouTube some of Bret Hart interviews, because they're always good.
Oh, yeah.
Bret Hart has good interviews, sit-down interviews. He's a good storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
It's...
What are those old interviews called? Don't they have a certain name? Is it like Shoot?
The shoot videos.
Videos.
I know there's like kayfabe commentaries does stuff.
Yeah.
And
basically, like any of the old school wrestling interviews are classic.
Yeah.
Like where they just have like the plain backdrop behind them and they're just yelling into the camera.
Bret
was good at that.
He was good at that. And then
I think like his he always talks about how he's like uncomfortable in front of the camera, and I think that's what makes the interviews great.
Yeah.
He's like, you can tell he's trying real hard.
He tries super hard.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. You just don't get that wrestling feel anymore these days. So I always look back at those old videos and it's like, man, this is when wrestling was cool.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch if you're into documentaries.
Yep.
Even if you're not a big wrestling fan, it's like
you don't
great
have
story.
to. You don't even have to be a wrestling fan, I think, to enjoy this. You get it. It's definitely, and I think that's what's great. It's like it's not a documentary like made from something in the past. Like it's literally like happening.
Yeah, it's a guy who does documentaries. It's not really a big wrestling fan guy doing it. He's doing this documentary.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know anything about wrestling, you still get an idea how wrestling works when you watch. The documentary.
You'll. I think even if you don't watch it, or if you do watch it, you'll have a whole new respect of at least wrestlers from back at that time. It's a lot different now. Like you can see really what kind of like, if that's what like the biggest wrestler at that time was going through. It had to be a lot tougher for like the mid card. That just had to be there every day and just didn't get the love that the big characters got.
Yeah, big money difference too.
Oh yeah.
It's just night and day to what some of those wrestlers made.
Yep.
You had to be a big star to make money.
Yep. So. But yeah, that's it. Hitman Hart, Wrestling with Shadows. It's definitely worth checking out. It's on Netflix, at least at this time, and
worth a watch.
Worth a watch.